School is the one place where I'm completely lost.
Schools could do a much better job of
In
building
school, you
community.
need to
I have my
build.
hand
Feels
up
like
all the
I'm
time.
always
Is
doing
anyone
wrong
even
and
noticing
feeling
me?
bad.
I feel invisible. I really like my one teacher. She
Don't
checks
say
Teachers are
in on me.
understanding.
Go over there
My
and calm
teachers
down.
recognize I
He
have a
helped me
learning
get
issue.
an assessment.
I don't want to go to school anymore
bullied.
due to being bullied at school.
There's bullying.
Failed 2
I
classes
don't
right
feel
after
welcome.
the assault.
We don't all come from stable homes.
Welcome to the School Attendance Review podcast, where we talk about the Yukon education system, the school attendance review done by the Child and Youth Advocate Office, and how that review relates to what's happening right now for Yukon students. So I'm here with Annette King, the Child and Youth Advocate for the Yukon Territory. And welcome to the podcast, Annette.
Thanks, Maxime.
This is kind of your podcast in some ways as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this. I think it'd be great to bring this review back to life.
Yeah, bring it back to life and make
Yeah.
it accessible
Yeah.
for people who don't want to read the whole document. They can listen to snippets and get a good sense of what's going on.
Yes.
Yeah, so for this podcast, Annette and I are currently in the Child and Youth Advocate Office, which is in Whitehorse and on the traditional territory of Kwanlin Dun First Nation and Han Quachung Council. And there's a whole bunch of other First Nations in the Yukon.
That's right. We work for children and youth throughout the whole Yukon. So we do always want to acknowledge all 14 First Nations, and not just the land. The land is a very important part, but it's also to acknowledge the history, the language, and the traditions of all 14 First Nations as we move toward improving the lives for young people.
So Annette is the Child and Youth Advocate for the Yukon, and you work at the Child and Youth Advocate Office with a team there. Can you just tell us a bit about what is the office? What do you do?
That's right. Yeah, we're a formal office, independent office in the Legislative Assembly. So we work for young people.
So my understanding, you work one-on-one with people, and then you're also doing, the office does these systemic reviews.
That's right. Our primary role is individual advocacy, which means working for the young people and trying to address these advocacy issues that they might be experiencing. Sometimes that doesn't take too long. Sometimes they're quick. And sometimes we see themes and trends and policy issues that need a bigger systemic review.
Right.
And that's when we do systemic advocacy.
Exactly. So speaking of those themes and trends, systemic advocacy, that's what this podcast is about, because there was a review on the education system here, the school attendance review. And so just, can you talk a bit about what that review was and why it came to be?
Yeah. So we've been open since 2010, and over the years we've noticed that lots of young people don't go to school, regardless of why we're working with them or how we come into contact with young people. We have been concerned about that. We want to understand what those barriers are. We wanted to start with asking Department of Education how they're addressing it, and found out that they didn't really respond to that. So we launched a formal review and worked with the Department of Education to make sure that we could have a public-facing review where we could report publicly along the way and do public engagement.
Right.
Yeah.
So public, making it accessible to the community, bringing the community in to be part of it, that was a priority.
Yeah, even sharing our findings along the way rather than waiting for a year and a half to provide a formal report that sits on a shelf.
Right.
Like we did we're doing a podcast now, Max.
Exactly.
We did social media, Facts and Findings Fridays, where we shared data and policy and youth voice each week, so that we sort of keep the conversation going.
Yeah. And so this review was 3 years ago.
Yes.
But it's very relevant now still. Can you talk about that?
It is, yeah, because still even in our individual advocacy, we are seeing the issues that we identified as the systemic themes within this report. Like, we identified areas of concern, and those are still what young people are experiencing.
Okay.
To the point where we actually could have 6 new systemic reviews
One
all
on
in
each
those
area.
areas. Yes. Not kidding.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 Well, I guess you got to tackle them one at a time. But what are those? What are those areas?
Yeah, there's lots of different reasons young people don't go to school. And we are talking K to 12. I'm not just talking about teenagers that wake up and decide not to go that day. Like it's all ages, and some of the factors are more connected to what's happening at school, and some of them are more connected to the child's experience outside of school.
Right.
So because sometimes schools are saying they're welcome to come to school, they just don't ever show up. And the themes that we found that kind of relate to that where there could be some personal factors going on in their family.
Yeah. There's reasons they're not showing up.
There is, mental health and trauma sometimes, or like, they're going through a court process, or, there's lots of factors that could happen. But the main things we saw are sometimes it's educational supports and programming for a young person, or behavioral supports. Those things are even worse now with the shortage in the schools. We see safety in school. So, if a young person doesn't feel safe there, or they've been victimized in any way, it's really hard to, convince that person to go to school. And sometimes parents don't want their child to go to school if they don't feel like they're safe, right?
Yeah.
Then, sometimes it's mental health and trauma. Young people don't leave their life experiences at the door and then go to school and learn all day long.
Yeah, it's not like, okay, I'm a brand new person now that I'm in school.
That's right. It's integrated, right?
Yeah.
And so, and same with personal factors. And it is a reality that sometimes school today, this week, this month might not be an option for a young person. And there needs to be individualized learning options, right?
Right.
So the issues that we see in our individual advocacy, no matter what they are, have been more significant for Indigenous children than non-Indigenous. And the vast majority of the young people that have accessed our office have been Indigenous. Way more
The vast majority.
The vast majority.
Wow,
it was about 80% at that time. And we've actually had an increase in non-Indigenous referrals. But it's consistently, like in all of our services, we see that overrepresentation, and we see an underrepresentation of support services that reflect those cultural needs. And so in our office, we have operated from a lens of acknowledgement of the harm that government services have influenced on young people and on their existence today. So we are constantly through a TRC lens. We know that residential schools are a source of trauma and are the greatest human rights violation for young people, and that young people today are still feeling some of that impact in these colonial systems.
Right.
And it's true, like, if you compare Whitehorse to rural communities as well, and rural communities have a higher Indigenous population, it is a greater concern in rural communities, and the issues are a little bit different there. Like even just how to travel to Whitehorse for services, you might miss 3 days of school, for a dentist appointment or a counseling appointment. There's lots of different reasons. The experience is quite unique in rural communities.
Right. So those themes, those core themes in this review, they basically parallel pretty much exactly what the territorial youth strategy is saying.
Yes, that's true. So it's actually aligned around the same timeline where youth organizations were getting together to envision a territorial youth strategy, and young people reached out broadly to their peers, finding out what's important to them. And those are very similar, right?
Yeah, super similar, pretty much identical. And it's interesting that all these themes are so relevant within just the umbrella of education. Mm-hmm. And the youth strategy is broader than that. Right. It looks at larger things outside of education, but it just shows you how holistic education itself is.
Yeah, that's exactly
how many
right.
things come into supporting young people in their education.
And schools are communities, right? Yeah. So there's lots to do, and there's lots happening. And now the territorial youth strategy is at a great place where government leaders are signing on to it and committed to implementing it. And I think that will help with some of these factors.
Amazing. Yeah. Very exciting.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask, in your message in the report, I'm going to quote you here. You said, "We have heard from you," being young people, that school needs to be a place where you can feel connection and belonging, where you feel safe, where you feel capable of succeeding, and where you have someone that believes in you. Yeah. That's pretty powerful. And what does that mean today?
Yeah, this report was for the young people, and we designed it with over 50 quotes from young people throughout the report, and it was really important. And we were told, do not just give this report to the government and forget about it. We will stay on it. Yeah. It's more than just a report, and we won't stop. That's what we need to keep working on, and seeing how our recommendations are being implemented, or if other things are happening that are making things better.
Right. Yeah. And so this episode right now, we're giving sort of a big snapshot, and then we're going to get a chance to dive into each of those themes in future episodes. And so belonging and culture is a huge one.
It is.
And then you touched on mental health and trauma, personal factors, educational and behavioral supports. I'm reading out the themes here from the report, and safety in school.
That's right.
So some of those are in school, some of those are out of school.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Awesome. Well, that's really great to hear, and very excited about this work. And we'll hear some more updates and some more findings.
Yes.
So stay tuned. We're going to have some more episodes coming up, diving into those themes, and can't wait to have you there.